When we first start gardening, we may get easily distracted with focusing in on the plants and the beds and the soil and everything like that. And we overlook something that, in my opinion, is super foundational to getting your garden thriving and set up right the first time, and that's community. When we're in our backyards, we may be head down focused, but if we look up for a second, you'll realize that there are invaluable resources from the people around you that already have experience doing what you're doing. And so today we are going to be talking about community and how important that can be to setting you up for success in your garden. So I have brought somebody in from my own community, Petrina from Homegrown Florida, and she is going to be sharing what she thinks community has brought from her. We're going to be going through 9 different types of communities that may be able to support you in your gardening journey.
So when I first started gardening, I don't know if this was your same experience, but when I first started gardening, I was kind of back here in my garden all by myself for hours. My family is wonderful. They love and they'll listen to everything I have to say, but when I get into talking about compost, dirt, and everything else, they're like, okay, Petrina, that's enough. So when I get a chance to talk to another gardener who's as interested in these things as I am, I'm just a geek about it.
So we are going to talk through 9 different ways that you might be able to connect with people in your area. And the first one we thought we would bring up is like Facebook groups or barter trade groups, whatever platform that may be on.
That was the first place that I started. So I went to Facebook as a beginner gardener to ask questions, to post that picture of what is wrong with my watermelon plant. But there's a second one that I wanted to throw in there, which is where you get more of the social element with those online groups. That is the Seed Club Mighty Network, I believe is the app that we use. And in her Seed Club, if you're in her Seed Club, or if you're not, definitely check it out, guys, because it is outstanding. It's like getting Christmas 4 times a year. You get 9 seeds every quarter. But you also get access to this online network where you can connect with other people. And it's not just, here, I'm going to throw a picture out and ask a question. It's a community. You really have built a community, and it's so cool. I'll put a picture out, really proud about my Seminole pumpkin growing up a palm tree, and they geek out about it just like I would.
That's what my intention with that group was. Those connections are so important and foundational to getting the garden thriving, I think, just because you have that support network to encourage you when you find a unique idea, or you can learn from other people. I think it's just like taking the Facebook groups and everything like that and kind of like one-upping it. You get the basics, but then you also get to make those connections and learn from each other in different ways.
There's a third one that I wanted to throw out there. If you're a little bit more of an in-person type of person, Florida Native Plant Society, they are specifically around Florida natives. That's edibles and non-edibles. And I've really gotten into them lately. If you become like a member, it's a nonprofit organization, so if you become a member, they have monthly meetings in your area, in your specific county, and then they also have these like field trips.
The tropical fruit tree meetups, there's all different similar statewide organizations that are going to break it down into regions, sometimes not by county, but by South Florida, Central Florida, North Florida, but finding people that are kind of in that microclimate with you.
Completely invaluable. I mean, you got to reach out there, you got to put yourself out there and really like make friends.
Yep. So another way to connect, our 4th way that we wanted to highlight, was taking classes. And that can sometimes feel really structured, but that's how we get foundational knowledge established. And so I don't think it's something to overlook, and especially there's obviously value in that foundational knowledge, even in an online setting, for example, taking online courses. But when you can find an in-person course, again, we're like kind of merging all of these, but we were just talking about like local meetups, hyper local to your area. If you're doing an in-person class, even if you're driving an hour or whatever to get to that, you're still going to be in the generalized area that you're working in. So not only are you getting the foundational knowledge, but you're getting something that's applicable to your climate. And so I teach classes. I have, I don't know, maybe 10 or so classes throughout the rest of the year. It's rotating subjects for me, at least. I don't teach the same class every time. So when I have 5 or 10 or 15 people ask for a specific class, I try to prioritize that. So it could be small space gardening and working in containers. It could be, I've got an urban homesteading one that's coming up. So that'll literally be like, I want to start a food forest. How do I do it? We're going to be doing ones on Florida-specific varieties of annual vegetables that do really well.
That's the one.
That's
the one for me.
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily have to be classes with me. Finding a class that is in a subject of interest that you like to grow into, composting, whatever your is piquing your interest or you feel like you need to learn, you might find resources that are in your area that are closer than you might expect. So number 5 is going to be something that I really enjoy doing, and that is either community gardens or school gardens. I've tended towards more school gardens because I have young children, and my personal background is I got into science because when I was a kid, my best friend's dad brought in like dead sharks, which sounds kind of crazy.
Dead sharks.
And to me, it was like the wonder that children experience with like physical activity, and that started my entire journey in education and my degree and my job before I started doing this. So that is personally why I like to focus in on the school gardens, is just because you have that moment to capture like that sheer wonder and joy.
And they'll carry it forever. They're
my
gonna
gosh.
take it with them, and they're gonna remember that day that they grew a tomato plant or ate fresh kale. They'll remember that.
And just exactly like you said, it's something that they can carry with them and know that even if they don't have that knowledge necessarily in their forming, they know it's possible. Like, hey, this is something that can be done. Maybe they don't do it when they're in elementary, but like maybe they get into high school or college and they're like, I need to be growing some food. I know it can be done. Let's do this. Not only from that inspiration standpoint, but as far as like building a community connection. It's not just the garden itself or the children itself. I now know their parents, and I do this for a living. So but the parents are having me come out and do like consults, and now we're getting them growing food outside of the school. I think it's a domino effect too, right?
Yeah.
So like we're talking about community, and so like when it's done here, and then they start to satellite it out, and then satellite it out from there. Community gardens are a way for us to connect, but then to share that knowledge and take it out from that one point, so that we have all of these little fingers starting to spread the word.
Little fingers.
Yes, I know, literal fingers.
And I wanted to share with you something that my little sister did. She actually reached out to her boss and the HR department at their work, and they put it as part of their wellness program and put in 3 raised beds.
That's
and
awesome.
Everyone at their job goes and works on it on their lunch breaks and after hours and stuff.
That's
which
amazing.
I thought was amazing, because if you feel like creating a community garden, it feels like a big thing, Or maybe you're like me and you don't have kids, so it's not like the school isn't an area where you can do it. You can do it at your job. Leading off that, where they can get more knowledge and learn hands-on, the University of Florida has extensions office, and if you guys have not really taken a look at this, you really have to. They have an entire website that has an immense amount of information. I mean, more than I think I could ever read. They do online classes, they do classes locally, they do them here at a library, but in other places it might be community centers. And they have programs where they'll teach you how to compost and give you a compost bin, not in all counties, but in some counties. And then they give you a rain barrel and talk to you about, how harvesting rain for your garden and what that does and how to use it and how to collect it, and give you a rain barrel.
I just took a class on dragon fruit through the extension office. It was online, but
cool.
It's just something that I'm just getting into growing, and I was like, extra resource.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out. I will say though, with the extension service, there are definitely more Q&A, so it might not be, depending on how social you get during an in-person class, but it's more of the foundational learning thing than the social aspect of community building. But it's definitely going to be locally focused resources The other thing that IFAS Extension Center does, which is super awesome, is the soil testing. If you're just starting out and you're working in your yard and thinking about an orchard, or even like you've done your first round of compost, but you're not sure what's going on with it, it's not expensive. You send in your soil sample and they give you a whole analysis. It's baseline, but it's good information for a very, very reasonable price instead of paying a couple $100s for like a super detailed soil biology.
Like the ones that you get from Amazon and mail back, they're way too expensive.
Yep.
Extension office is the place.
Number 7 is something that I find to be one of my favorite social connections throughout the year, and that is doing a seed swap or plant exchange.
Fun.
I know.
So
I know. That is like the true, like, you're really getting into like the gardening folks. Like a lot of us are going to be super geeked out and like talking varietals and are we propagating this way versus that way. Don't feel intimidated though, because I've yet to be at a seed or plant swap where people are hoity-toity or
never
so generous, so giving. An excellent way to build social connections, focus in on the local environment. I host seed exchanges and plant swaps usually twice a year, kind of like coinciding with like when things go to seed for like the season. So we usually do one in fall and late spring. But you know, I do the Florida Permaculture Convergence. They have a day where we just sit there and talk seeds, and we like line up all our plants that we want to, you know, exchange with people. And I feel like you get stories more instead of just the seeds or the plants. And so like there was this lovely person that I met, and she was telling me about how her grandmother and her aunts and now her have all saved these sunflower seeds, and they've all lived here in Florida. And it's like, yeah, I could just go buy a pack of sunflower seeds, but now I have a story behind these sunflower seeds.
These sunflowers have character now.
Yes,
you're going to
they
always
do.
remember that family.
Absolutely.
I have a similar experience. A lovely lady said, I've been growing this purple tomato. She's like, I don't know what the name is. I've been growing it in my family for years. It works every time. And she sent me seeds.
Aww.
I'm so excited to grow this tomato.
Purple tomatoes are my absolute favorite. So if you end up with extra seeds.
Yeah, absolutely.
But see, those are the connections that you get with the plant and seed exchanges that you might not find elsewhere. And I would say, even though they might seem like, if you're a new gardener and you're like, well, I don't even know what to plant, let alone have something to offer, 9 times out of 10 I would recommend going. I've very rarely heard of somebody excluding because you don't have something to offer.
Never.
Or even if it's the pack that you tried that failed miserably, bring that pack so you can show them, and they'll be like, oh no honey, like let's try this one instead. So go regardless of your experience or knowledge level, because that is going to be people who are just there to help other gardeners grow.
Now the 8th one that was a little new to me, and I only actually did it this year, was volunteering at a established garden. So like a botanical garden, a community garden, maybe you're not part of it. Or I actually reached out to Nick over at Growing Back to Eden, who's actually doing the market garden for Pete Canaris over at Green Dreams. They kind of work together, and I was like, hey, you guys have any volunteer experience, anything that you have going on that you need some help with? And they're like, yeah, we need people to come and help harvest for our market garden. So I went over there, and it was my first experience ever harvesting, and I picked Nick's brain so much. Like, how did you grow that? How did you grow this? He showed me around. It was such an amazing experience. My back hurt afterwards, I'm not gonna lie. They harvest a lot out of that garden. But man, it was a really cool experience. And even if they don't put it up on their website or, you know, mention it in their YouTube channels, it really is a really good opportunity to reach out and just say, hey, do you have any volunteer experience? Take the kids out there. Get them in the dirt. If you don't have a garden in your backyard, you could reach out to established gardens.
You're giving them a tremendous benefit, helping them harvest or plant or weed or whatever needs to be done, turning compost. That's a huge service to them that they can't really maybe afford to outsource potentially, or they just are overwhelmed with demand, whatever the case is. That's a huge thing, that you're offering them. And in exchange, they can offer you, just like you were saying, knowledge.
A ton of knowledge.
And not only that, now you know your farmer's name, or you're building community agriculture, which is something that is so important. Scene change. It's Florida. It rains. So we wanted to make sure that we finished everything off with sharing you number 9, which is something that I wanted to add to the list, and we're really getting into it.
Yeah.
And that is permaculture design courses. Once you've started dabbling in gardening, I think it is kind of like that, like, sounds good, like a gateway drug. Like, you start with like a little container garden, and then you're like, I definitely need some raised beds, and then you're like, and some fruit trees, and I also need to compost, and I need some chickens.
Keeps going.
And
Keeps
it
going.
does. But regardless of where you are in that journey, I think a lot of people will put off permaculture design courses, thinking that it's something that needs to be for like people who are super advanced, or that are really ready for like this full-scale food forest, or you've got like a 1/4 acre that you need to develop, or 3 acres or whatever. And so they kind of discount it as not really necessary for somebody who's living in suburbia with a backyard raised garden.
Like me.
But permaculture is one, it's not just about gardening, it's about so much more. And one of the foundational tenets of permaculture is building community and social interactions and community-based economics. Everything truly, like, there is absolutely the plant aspect and those kinds of things that you'll learn in permaculture, but it's also about creating social connections. And I know that I am personally still good friends with a lot of people that I took my permaculture design course, and we help each other in different business aspects. We help each other garden. We help share resources, and it's because of the social community that I built through that course. Again, there's absolute benefit to online stuff. I would highly recommend doing it in person. But just finding a permaculture design course in your area and just giving it at least an opportunity to see if it fits into your life or your schedule. I think they have an amazing amount of information and community building tools that they'll be able to offer you.
So we hope that this 9 ways to get connected in your community has given you guys some ideas about how you can engage the people around you, the community around you, the farms around you, to really get in there, get social, get more education, and really just grow that garden, that food forest, that whatever you're growing, bigger, easier, healthier.
Petrina, I mentioned, has her own business or following or way for people to connect with her, and she does Homegrown Florida. And so many people, I think, come from like a limiting mindset, and they think about competition, because really a lot of the information that we provide is quite similar in many ways.
Sure.
The more people we have sharing this information, the more we can lift up everybody in the community. And so I'd love for people to connect with you as well. You have a YouTube channel.
Yep.
What are other ways that they might be able to connect with you, create community, or just otherwise learn with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. I think the reason that so many of us get into this is not for ourselves, it's for the community. It's for helping people to grow food. So it's not a competition thing. We want to help. So if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on YouTube at Homegrown Florida. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, all under the Homegrown Florida name. And feel free to reach out, comment, or send me a direct message. I am always here to help.
And I will have all of the links to her contact information down below in the show notes.